Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, where we discuss all of the top news in the world of Major League Baseball. My name is Ben.
And I'm Jeremiah.
We are back here, another Wednesday episode we're going to record for you today. Got another action-packed show for you. Got to fill in a whole entire week of baseball. We are in the off-season. We're getting deals, trades, negotiations, everything done every single day. So we're not going to waste any time. Our first segment of the day, we're just going to do some updates on some deals that have been done within the past week. A lot of big-name ones. Jeremiah, honestly, I don't know where we even want to start.
There's a lot of ways. There's a lot of deals that we can go. There's a lot happened when we got off the air last week to now. But there's two big signings that the Dodgers have made, and actually three if you think about it. There's three big signings that they made that were on their team last year, and they were huge contributors on their team, and especially on the way to the playoffs. The Dodgers, Justin Turner agreed to come back on a 4-year deal that's worth $64 million. Kenley Jansen agrees to a 5-year deal that's worth $80 million for the Dodgers, and Rich Hill is coming back on the 3-year deal.
3 years, yes.
Yeah, 3-year deal with the Dodgers. So those are three really big major signings there for the Dodgers, who look like they were on their way to going to playing against the Cubs. They actually did play against the Cubs. They were just one really good Cubs team away from going to the World Series there. But yeah, they made it really, really deep into the playoffs. I do think the fact that the emergence of Justin Turner really did play a big part on him getting the new contract. Kenley Jansen, really valuable. He had a lot of offers from Miami, the Nationals, trio of teams, and that's not even the biggest deal for a closer that we saw. Aroldis Chapman has a 5-year, $86 million deal with the Yankees, and that includes a no trade clause. I think to no California teams. So Jansen has the second largest deal for a reliever in history. Chapman has the largest. Mark Melancon had the third largest. It was originally the largest last week when he signed with the Giants, but with Jansen and Chapman getting their contracts now, they do have the two largest contracts for a reliever in history. And then Dexter Fowler finally has a new team. He signed a 5-year, $82.5 million contract with the St. Louis Cardinals. I really like that signing as well. But the biggest deal that I kind of had a problem with, and I was talking about this deal a little bit last week on Twitter. I actually mentioned it to you before the show. It was the Washington Nationals acquiring Adam Eaton, which I do think he's an actual valuable player. I kind of think they kind of overbought him a little bit. The White Sox acquired Lucas Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez, who are two of the big pitching prospects for the Nationals. I think that's a steal for the White Sox. The White Sox are having quite an offseason. They're getting a lot of prospects. Their farm system has improved. Because remember, they did get two really good prospects in the Chris Sale deal as well. So they've literally turned two players into 4 really good prospects that can be really good for them in the future. And the Nationals were in talks with the Pirates of getting Andrew McCutchen. That obviously didn't work out. Adam Eaton was the was the second option, but Adam Eaton, if you look at the numbers side by side, with the WAR and other numbers besides like home runs and all that, Adam Eaton's actually he's not actually that bad of a signing. He has a team-friendly contract for the next 5 years. Andrew McCutchen was only on contract for 2 more years. So for that reason, I can see why they made that move. But there's so many other signings, other deals that were made in the past week. We previously talked about Wade Davis going to Chicago. It became official. Jorge Soler, which was in that deal. So the Cubs traded Jorge Soler to the Kansas City Royals for Wade Davis. But yeah, it's been really fast-paced offseason.
I feel like the Nationals with the Adam Eaton deal kind of hit the panic button a little bit because they were in the running for so many players this offseason. Chris Sale doesn't go there. He goes to Boston. Andrew McCutchen doesn't get traded. Try to get Kenley Jansen, goes back to L.A. Try to re-sign Melancon, goes to San Francisco. So I feel like they kind of panicked and were like, we have to come away with something in this offseason. So they gave up 2 of their top pitching prospects, as you mentioned, for Eaton. Eaton's not a terrible player, but a little bit of a panic deal in my eyes.
Yeah. To me, by far.
To me, the team that's coming out, I wouldn't say the best, but in a really good situation, especially in the last couple of days, because that's when those deals were signed, was Jansen going back to the Dodgers, 5 for 80, as you mentioned, and then Turner last night stays with the Dodgers, 4 for 64. He hit a career-high 27 home runs, drove in a career-high 90 RBIs, and a career-high 34 doubles last year. So by far his best year statistically. Jansen takes less money to go back to the Dodgers, so that tells you what he thinks of the organization and the team. He's also not a guy that's a big fan of change, so he agrees to stay back there. The Dodgers, although they are spending a lot of money, Rich Hill you mentioned as well, they're doing it a little differently this year. They're not signing any of the top big-name free agents. They're just re-signing their own guys within their organization, and I feel like that's a really good move because you can keep the chemistry alive, same players. In Jansen's instance, same catchers, pitching rotation coaches, not having to change any differences there. And you can build on this already young team that had a successful year last year. We're challenging the Cubs in the divisional round of the playoffs. You have Corey Seager, who won the Rookie of the Year and was also 3rd in the MVP voting. So you have another good young cornerstone to build around at the shortstop position. So I think it's a really good offseason for the Dodgers.
Yeah, and I kind of think their offseason has been a little underrated. I think it's because they haven't really made a huge splash like we're accustomed to seeing. Like them re-signing Kenley Jansen, them signing Justin Turner, those are the 2 biggest deals I think they've made in the past couple of off seasons. Because, you get more stability there at the third base position. Turner, even if he doesn't happen to not have the same offensive year that he had last year, he's still great and on the diamond as well. Great defensive third baseman. And not only that, you keep the chemistry, you keep the stability on that position because I think there was some talk if Justin Turner was going to move somewhere elsewhere, maybe they could have potentially put Corey Seager at third, but I don't think they want to do that right now. I do think they're really set at shortstop at Corey Seager, who is going to be a better player, by the way. Corey Seager was an MVP finalist and was the NL Rookie of the Year. So that should tell you what type of player he is. And them getting Kenley Jansen is a really huge move because they don't have to bring up another closer within the organization. They get their guys still. But I really do like the Dexter Fowler deal. I do like what Dexter Fowler did. He took a 1-year deal with Chicago, with the Cubs, that is. And he really betted on himself of getting a really, really big contract. He had a phenomenal year with the Cubs. He was a huge part of the World Series run. And now he's going to a rivalry. He's going to the other side of the rivalry there with the St. Louis Cardinals, and who needed an outfielder, by the way. So I do like Fowler going to the Cardinals. I do think he's a good fit for that organization because, he's not a guy that can really do too much. Like, he's not a guy that's going to give you a lot of home runs, but he does give you a lot of speed. He does give you a lot of solid at-bats, and I do think that's valuable. He does get on base a lot too. So that's something that's very valuable to me, and I do think he's going to be really successful with the Cardinals, especially with a pretty solid lineup around him. Really solid lineup.
Fowler last year hit .276. Good leadoff guy, good fielder. You saw what he did in Game 7 of the World Series. Leads off the game with a home run, so definitely not afraid of the big stage. It's a good move. I think it's maybe a little overpriced. They gave him $82 million for 5 years, so they gave him quite a pretty penny. But it's a guy who can come in and play every single day, every single game for you, lead off. Like you said, get on base, possibly steal a few bases. So it's not a terrible move. I like the move. It's interesting that he went to the division rival like that. And they're actually going to have a series on the opening series of the weekend, the Cubs and the Cardinals. So he'll be playing his old team right away. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting. And, getting back to that Adam Eden deal, I do think it was kind of a panic move because they struck out on so many players. Andrew McCutchen would have been a really good he would have been a really phenomenal player in that lineup. They couldn't get Melancon. They couldn't get Chris Sale as well. They just couldn't. They just haven't been able to make a big splash like everyone thought they would. And, they're in a big market. They're in the nation's capital, but there's just something that's not gelling with the front office. It's just something I just don't know what they're doing, and I'm surprised they've been striking out on all these free agents. But I do think the White Sox have had a really good offseason. The Dodgers have a pretty good offseason as well. I actually think the Giants have a good offseason. They haven't made too many splashes, but they have addressed their needs. I don't even think they're done yet. But yeah, it is a wild and crazy offseason. I don't even think we're even finished with it yet.
We're not. There was a deal actually reported earlier this morning. It is reliever Koji Uehara. He agrees to a 1-year deal with the Chicago Cubs. He's 42 years old, so he's a little old, but obviously a really good relief pitcher in his time since coming over from Japan. Was a closer for the Red Sox in 2013 when they went on to win the World Series. Last year, he made 50 appearances with a 3.45 ERA. He also recorded 12.1 strikeouts per 9 innings, which was his highest since that 2013 World Series champion winning year. He took less money to go to the Cubs as opposed to some other teams, so it's possible that he's looking at trying to get one more ring before he finally hangs up the glove, I guess you can say. So it's not a terrible move, but yet again, it's Theo Epstein just bringing in quality pitching. Uehara can be one of those like situational guys, good setup man, possibly a 7th inning guy. So, yet again, just Theo Epstein a step ahead of the game.
Yeah, getting to that Uehara deal. The Cubs, actually, I found this on an article on ESPN. The Cubs will have pitchers who are on the mound for the final out in 3 of the past 4 World Series. That is Koji Uehara, Wade Davis, and Montgomery. From last year, the Cubs, yeah. So that's pretty amazing stat I found on ESPN. But yeah, it's a wild off season.
And we are not even done, but we are done with that segment. Obviously, we'll be back next week to talk more free agent moves, unless something breaks within the next half hour to an hour. I don't see it, but who knows? Anything could happen. So after the break, we'll talk actually about some of these closers you mentioned, Jeremiah. I feel like we're in the year of the closer. 3 monster deals.
Hence the name of the episode.
Exactly. 3 monster deals this offseason for closers within Major League Baseball. We'll talk about that, break down why we think it's happening, and just how important closers are to each organization right after the break at the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We're going to get into we're going to talk about some closers here. The closer position in baseball has gotten so much more value this year than it has ever before. Since I remember, we had teams in the playoffs that couldn't even close a game, hence the San Francisco Giants there. They addressed that need. And, we had, teams that were in the final series, in their respective leagues, were really good closers. And then we had the world champion with probably the best closer in baseball, and Aroldis Chapman. Kenley Jansen, Aroldis Chapman, Mark Melancon, three of the largest deals for relievers in a while. It's the year of the closer, Ben, and we've seen how the importance is for the position. Kenley Jansen goes back to the Dodgers. They got their guy. Aroldis Chapman signs a fat 5-year, $86 million contract. No trade clause for, I think 3 years. Probably the whole contract. They get their guy back. Remember, Chapman was with the Yankees last year before he got traded to the Cubs. So basically he was there for the World Series run, which at the time of that deal, I wasn't a huge fan because they gave up so many prospects for him. But I did like it at the end because they got a championship out of Chapman there. He was a huge part of that. And Melancon, he addresses a huge need that the Giants were missing last year. They couldn't close out a game in the playoffs. They just couldn't close out half of their games. They probably could have won so many more games. They probably could have won more games than the Cubs if that would have happened. And, he wasn't a free agent this year, but Wade Davis goes to Chicago and he's just as good as these three guys, if not maybe even better. But, yeah, it is – teams have really gone mad. They've gone cuckoo for closers. We'll just say that.
So listen to the stats. So within the past week, Jansen, Chapman, and Melancon signed deals totaling $228 million. Throughout his entire career, Mariano Rivera earned $169 million.
One of the best closers of all time.
And I realize you have a 3-to-1 pitcher ratio here. You also have Rivera, who played a number of years, and baseball contracts are a lot higher now than really they've ever been because there's a lot more revenue in there. Teams have more money, etc. So I do have that little stat, but it is a little flawed in my eyes. But anyways, that just shows you the three biggest contracts this year by relievers ever, these three guys. Think about what could happen within the next couple of years. Andrew Miller, Zach Britton, who had really the best season a closer has ever had in baseball last year. Think about what kind of deal he's going to get, whether it's the Orioles or someone else. Same thing with Miller. I don't see Andrew Miller being a setup guy this whole career. He's going to be a closer. He's going to be a lockdown closer.
He was a closer for the Yankees before he got traded. Well, before they signed Chapman.
Right.
Miller definitely does have the stuff to be a closer.
Exactly.
We've seen it in. Don't forget, the Yankees also do have a really good 7-inning guy or a setup guy in Dylan Betances. I do think he has a potential to be a great closer. He didn't really take advantage of his opportunity a couple years ago when there was injuries to the back end of the bullpen. But that's another guy I think that can be a real good closer in the majors. And the closer position is just so valuable now. And there has been deals for the past couple years where teams sign relievers to be the closer, and it just hasn't worked out. I remember that the Oakland A's signed Jim Johnson after he had two great seasons with Baltimore. Was terrible the year he came in. I think he got designated for assignment that year. Yeah, I think we're honestly not just seeing, the value of closer. I think we're kind of seeing the emergence of a closer, so to speak.
I think what we're kind of seeing is a shift, and here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to basically give some opinion on what I saw last year, especially in the postseason. You see a lot of these deals, monster money. Obviously, they mean a lot during the regular season. You got to get a guy to close a game. You can't just blow all these games. Saw what happened to the Giants last year. But I think a lot of these deals have to do with what you're going to see in the postseason. Think about this postseason. How many times did you see closers coming in during the 8th inning? Kenley Jansen almost went 3 innings on a save during one game.
He probably could have.
Aroldis Chapman had to go 6 innings on a couple of games. You saw this happen. I'm not saying this is going to happen in the regular season because you have a 162-game season. It's not worth it. But come playoff time, I think what you're going to see from now on out pretty often is you're going to see closers going for 6 out saves, I was going to say. I think you're going to see that pretty often. And I think getting all this money is why they're going to do it.
Yeah,
they're going to say, hey, we're giving all this money. Come playoff time, Game 7, you might have to go 3 innings. You might have to get 6 outs, 7 outs to get a save. And we're going to give you all this money because we believe you can do it. And I think the closing position is kind of changing in that aspect. The endurance for these pitchers is getting a lot longer. They're pitching more often, making more appearances during the regular season. I think that's why all these closers are getting money, and the importance of a lockdown closer is definitely there.
Yeah, it has changed so much from 2 years ago, 3 years ago to now. And, all these moves are basically postseason moves. I agree with you 100%. Like, we're not going to see Chapman, Jansen go like 3 of the 4 innings in the regular season game because that's just absurd. That's why they have starters. They have rotation. But when it comes playoff time, I wouldn't be surprised if Jansen goes from he makes a 3-inning save. I wouldn't be surprised if Chapman has a 6-out save. Melancon, he may not have the strikeout stuff as Jansen and Chapman, but I do think he's the guy that can happen to. He would have to do that when called upon. And the good thing for the Giants, though, is that they have a guy in Madison Bumgarner who can pretty much have a save too.
A 5-inning save.
We seen that a couple years ago. So these are basically just postseason moves. All these teams that signed these 3 closers were in the postseason last year. These are just postseason moves, guys. Don't get me wrong. They're going to make a lot of impact in the regular season, and they should. But these 3 teams that signed these 3 relievers are thinking championship and playoffs.
Exactly, and you mentioned Chapman. The Yankees gave him a lot of money, the most for a reliever ever, but they kind of got him back, although they're paying him more money, with the addition of prospects from the Cubs. So they're kind of just paying extra money for those prospects if you think about it that way. So that's a good move. And I mentioned the next couple of years what you're going to see is Andrew Miller become possibly a free agent or Cleveland sign him to an extension. Zach Britton, same thing, or he stays with the Orioles. And all they're going to do is earn even more money than these guys because this happens in all sports. You see, okay, I think I'm as good as this guy, so I need to deserve a little bit more money and then a little more, a little more. Same thing happens in the NFL. Seems like every quarterback that signs is the new highest paid player. You know what I mean? Or new highest paid cornerback or lineman. It happens all the time. And this is what's going to happen these next couple of years. So we're looking at these deals now. It's going to get even higher the next couple of years.
Oh, yeah.
I think so.
That and not just for a closer position, but I just think that's all of baseball. That's just how sports is. You see a guy, you see someone get a really big contract, and you're like, say if I'm Zach Britton, and then you see the Aroldis Chapman deal, and then if I'm Zach Britton, I'll be like, well, I had probably one of the best years of a closer. I was talked about to getting Cy Young. I deserve more money than this guy. So they're going to want a lot more money than these guys. And yeah, it may sound greedy to some people, like the average person. But then again, you got to think about what they do for a living. And, baseball, you're constantly traveling. You have probably the largest schedule. You have actually the largest schedule in all major professional sports. So, yeah, these guys are going to get their money. I wouldn't be surprised if we see, a bigger contract than Chapman that we see like in the past couple of years.
Exactly. It's crazy. It is literally the year of the closer.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to do with the postseason last year, what we saw, and how important those relievers were to their respective teams. We'll take our last break at the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. After the break, we're going to talk about the new anti-bullying and anti-hazing deal within baseball and whether or not we like it. After the break at the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
always on the go, but the day just won't be one without your Hollywood fix. Let Golden State Media Concepts Entertainment Podcast take care of that. Jordan and Keith is Entertainment Tonight meets Access Hollywood.
I'm Jordan. The guy laughing, that's Keith.
Yeah, I'm Keith.
An all-inclusive look of pop culture.
So part of baseball's new anti-hazing and anti-bullying policy prohibits teams from, quote, requiring, coercing, or encouraging players to engage in activities that include dressing up as women or wearing costumes that may be offensive to individuals based on their race, sexuality, nationality, age, sexual orientation, gender identity, or other characteristic. However, the league is leaving the door open for players to be dressed up in what considers non-offensive ways, such as superheroes or cartoon characters. So, Jeremiah, we've seen in the past, it seems like the Cubs, they have the most fun in baseball, and why wouldn't they, of course? They're the best team in baseball, World Series champs. But we've seen in the past, there are players dressing up maybe in like a league of their own outfits, maybe having like little kitty girly backpacks. All these rookies, what they do, this happens all around sports. In the NFL, we see people getting like those little peanut confetti things in their car, or fruit snack packages,
or the haircuts that the rookies get in the NFL.
Right.
Yeah.
So the baseball is kind of taking a step in, I guess we could say a certain direction, because we'll agree or disagree if it's right or wrong. But they're taking a step in a direction saying we're not going to tolerate things like this anymore. I understand that, and I do agree with it. But come on, man. Like, they're just trying to have a little fun. It's not anything to discriminate people's sexual orientation or their race or anything like that. It's not meant to be that way.
Yeah, and I think Major League Baseball are kind of making it a little bit more of a bigger deal than it should be. Don't get me wrong. I do think it's kind of inappropriate for, to do this because I remember David Price, he left Yankee Stadium, dressed as a woman, but it was part of hazing, and then there's a couple of players that reacted on social media, including Ross Stripling, who was a rookie for the Dodgers. He uploaded a picture with himself and 3 other teammates, including Julio Urias was a part of that group as well. He said, "Honored to be one of the last players to ever dress up as a woman." So, I guess it's been a tradition in baseball the past couple of years. So I do think maybe I kind of see the reason why MLB is doing it. They may be thinking it's a little bit of it's kind of inappropriate for the young fans to see that. So I kind of think I think they kind of have that logic in them. But I do think but as myself as an average fan, I kind of think sometimes it is hilarious. It's really harmless. It's harmless. It's not like with the prospect at Texas Rangers did with his teammate this past summer, which if you don't know about it, I'm not going to get into it right now. You can just Google that part. But yeah, I do think it's kind of like a little bit more. It kind of loses that tradition a little bit. And, Houston Street, the Angels reliever, also had an opinion piece in Associated Press saying, it kind of takes away the tradition of baseball in that, it kind of prohibits teams from, requiring or encouraging players, to engage in activities or, it just kind of takes away from the team building. That's what he was trying to say. He said he remembers when he did it. He remembers he saw other players did it. So it's been a tradition over past, for a long time. But I do think maybe Major League Baseball kind of do think it's inappropriate to have this happen, continue. So that's my take on this subject.
I think baseball is trying to get more professional.
That too. That's the same thing that I was trying to say is that, they kind of think it's inappropriate for a variety of reasons, including, you got like young viewers and you maybe want to have a little bit more professional, kind of attire. Because then again, these are those player jobs. You wouldn't go to work dressed as a woman if you were a man, honestly, unless you were into that kind of thing. But Still, yeah, I do think that kind of does play in some part. Professionalism is a huge reason why maybe they're doing it, and they are one of the 4 major sports leagues in America.
Baseball is an old-time game. It's a traditional game. Trying to get professional. I'm not a big fan of it, but it completely makes sense to me. And baseball is not technically throwing everything aside and saying you can't do anything. They're still letting you dress up as like superheroes or cartoon characters. And I guess that's a little something. You'll still have rookie hazing in some way, like carry my duffel bag off the team bus or whatever they do. So there's still some rookie hazing going on. I think they're just trying to clean it up, make it look more professional. And I can understand that, but it's like, really? Like, isn't there more important things to worry about? Can't you figure out ways to try and improve the game, improve ratings, speed up the game of play, and not worry so much about anti-hazing? It's not like these players are getting bullied. If people are coming out and saying, we're getting bullied, we're not in support of this, we're being forced to do it or else we face the risk of not playing or something like that, not having the respect of our teammates, and I can understand that. But no one's really coming out and saying that.
You know what, though? To your point what you just said, I wouldn't be surprised if some players do actually feel that way, but I don't think they will ever come out because, baseball is looked as a quote-unquote man's game. There's that the old saying, there's no crying in baseball. Maybe that's the reason why some of these players haven't come out. Maybe they are players that don't really like this. Maybe people have come anonymous, they were very quiet in talking to the league about this, but we didn't hear anything about that. So for that part, I do understand why MLB would change because maybe there is players behind closed doors that don't really like this part. But, we did hear from a couple of big leaders, in Houston Street's article, he said, yes, I remember my dress-up day. I remember it fondly. I was dressed as a female of some sort. We weren't making fun of people that actually dressed that way. We were dressed up in uncomfortable clothes, as a contrast of macho dudes dressed in tight-fitting or too revealing clothes for our body type. Anyone looking at the exercise from a lens of humor would see the contrast for what it is and wouldn't be offended. So basically, this is just, to be humorous.
Exactly.
It's not meant to be hazing, but, MLB just wants to ban hazing all around.
It's good, hard fun. Nothing wrong with it in my eyes, but baseball is taking a different step. Like I said, they're still allowing something to go on, so I guess that's better than nothing. Teams are just going to have to get a little more creative in what they do now. They're allowing superheroes in costumes, so maybe they'll do like Wonder Woman or something, but then again, that has to do with gender and sexuality and stuff, so maybe they won't do that.
Yeah, and
it's not any hazing if you're allowing someone to dress up like Batman. That's a good thing. I was like, I'd love to dress up like Batman.
But the thing is, I think MLB, another reason why I think Major League Baseball wants to do this is because I don't think they want players to come out of Major League Baseball stadiums in intergender clothes. I just don't think they want to do that. Maybe that's the reason why they're doing it, but it's it is what it is. That's the thing I can say about this. It is what it is.
So, I guess it is what it is. But anyways, that's going to end our show. But Jeremiah, real quick, I have one question for you.
Okay, what?
Probably the biggest name left on the free agent market is slugger Edwin Encarnacion. When and where will this guy get signed?
I'm surprised he hasn't got signed yet. I can actually see him getting signed by the Red Sox, designated hitter. I only see him going to the American League.
I don't think he can field. I don't trust him at first base.
He can't field. He's not really. He doesn't fit the National League unless he plays first base. I could probably see him going to the Red Sox because they don't have their designated hitter in David Ortiz anymore. Another team I can possibly see them looking at maybe the White Sox, maybe looking for a designated hitter. Maybe the Texas Rangers looking for a designated hitter. So there's a couple of teams that really do fit because of the designated hitter role. But I am surprised that he hasn't been signed yet. Maybe he's asking for a little bit too much money. Maybe teams don't think he's worth the money that he wants. But I do think he's going to get signed by spring training. There's just no way they're going to leave that kind of power on the market.
He rejected a $60 million qualifying offer from Toronto. Biggest mistake he could have ever made by now.
He doesn't have a job right now. He's on the street.
He's on the Houston street.
Okay. All right. I see what you tried to do there.
Well, anyways, that's going to conclude our show for today. We would like to thank you for listening. My name is Ben.
And I'm always going to be Jeremiah.
Yeah, unless you change your name like Meta World Peace did on our test.
Yeah, if I do it like all randomly, hey guys, I changed my name.
But yeah, that will be Jeremiah. My name is Ben. We'd like to thank you for listening. We'll be back next week talking all things baseball right here at the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. Have a good day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.